William Carter adjusted his simple blue shirt as he entered the Bellcrest Grand, the luxury hotel he'd secretly purchased last week. At 72, the billionaire's plan was straightforward. Experience his new acquisition incognito before the official announcement. But Richard Langston, the hotel's imperious general manager, took one look at the elderly black man and saw only an unwelcome intruder. "You're making our guests uncomfortable," Richard hissed, security guards approaching, as a young woman discreetly filmed the confrontation. "Get out now!" William departed with quiet dignity, betraying nothing. Outside, he made a single call. "Activate Plan B. It's time I saw the rot for myself." Within 24 hours, William would return, not as an owner, but as a janitor, with recording devices and the patient determination of a man who'd built an empire by understanding that true power often works best from the shadows. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. William Carter stood on the sidewalk outside the Bellcrest Grand, adjusting his simple blue button-down shirt. At 72, his salt and pepper hair was neatly trimmed, and his keen brown eyes missed nothing. He carried only a small leather duffel bag, nothing that screamed billionaire hotel magnate. That was precisely the point. "Sir, would you like me to take your bag?" asked the doorman, a young man with a plastered-on smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "No, thank you," William replied with a warm smile. "I can manage." The doorman's smile faltered for a moment as he sized up William, whose modest attire didn't match the hotel's usual clientele. With a slight shrug, he opened the door, his attention already shifting to a white couple emerging from a luxury SUV. William stepped into the grand lobby of the Bellcrest Grand. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, casting prismatic reflections across marble floors. The space buzzed with activity, guests checking in, bellhops wheeling luggage, business people huddled in plush seating areas. This was the flagship of the hotel chain he had just quietly acquired. After weeks of private negotiations, he now owned 51% of the struggling Bellcrest Group. The board had been desperate for his investment, but insisted on keeping the acquisition quiet until the official announcement next week. William had agreed, seeing an opportunity to observe his new property without the filter of preparation. Across the lobby, a tall man with slicked-back blonde hair barked orders at two uniformed staff members. "Those flower arrangements are all wrong. Replace them immediately. And tell housekeeping the third-floor hallway still smells like cleaning products. Fix it before the Henderson party arrives." The staff members nodded nervously, scurrying away. The man straightened his name tag, which read, "Richard Langston, General Manager," before turning to berate a housekeeper about a barely visible smudge on a glass tabletop. William observed the interaction with a slight frown. He'd read about Langston in the acquisition reports, highly recommended by the previous owners for his ability to cut costs while maintaining appearances. Now William was seeing what that meant in practice. He approached the front desk, where a young woman, with a pinched expression, typed furiously on her computer. Her name tag read, "Tasha Wilson." "Excuse me," William said politely. Tasha glanced up, her gaze flicking dismissively over William before returning to her screen. "Just a moment," she said without warmth. William waited patiently as she finished. Whatever task had captured her attention. After nearly a full minute, she looked up with a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How can I help you today?" she asked, her tone suggesting she'd rather be doing anything else. "I was hoping to take a tour of your facilities before deciding on a stay," William said. "I've heard wonderful things about the Bellcrest." Tasha's smile froze. Her eyes darted to William's simple clothes and small bag. "Do you have a reservation, sir?" "Not yet. As I mentioned, I'd like to see what you offer first." Tasha's fingers drummed on the counter. "I'm afraid we don't provide tours. You can view our rooms and amenities on our website." She slid a business card across the counter. "If you'd like to make a reservation, you can call the number here." William picked up the card but didn't move. "Perhaps I could speak with a manager. I understand your policy, but I'm considering an extended stay and would appreciate a more personal touch." Tasha's eyes narrowed. She glanced toward Richard Langston, who was now berating a bellhop for some perceived failure. With a tight smile, she said, "One moment," and stepped away from the counter. William watched as she approached Richard, speaking in hushed tones while occasionally glancing back. Richard's expression darkened as he looked over at William. "Wonderful," William murmured. To himself, "Here we go." Richard strode across the lobby, Tasha trailing behind him. His face was set in a mask of professional concern, but his eyes were cold. "Good afternoon, sir," Richard said, his voice carrying just enough to attract the attention of nearby guests. "Is there a problem?" "No problem at all," William replied calmly. "I was simply inquiring about the possibility of touring the hotel before committing to a stay." Richard folded his arms. "I understand, but as my colleague explained, we don't offer tours. The Bellcrest Grand is a luxury establishment catering to discerning clientele. Our rooms begin at $500 per night." He emphasized the price, looking pointedly at William's modest bag. "Price isn't an issue," William said, maintaining his composure. "I'm interested in quality and service." Richard's smile tightened. "Sir, I don't believe our establishment is what you're looking for. Perhaps the Comfort Inn down the street would be more suitable." A few guests nearby had paused their conversations, watching the interaction with veiled interest. Among them, a young woman with dark hair pulled out her phone, angling it discreetly toward William and Richard. "I'm specifically interested in the Bellcrest," William insisted. "If you could just—" "Sir," Richard interrupted, his voice hardening. "You're making our guests uncomfortable. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." William's eyebrows rose. "Making guests uncomfortable? I'm simply standing here having a conversation." Richard stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Look, we both know what's happening here. You're not a guest, and you have no intention of becoming one. You're loitering, and it ends now." William stood straighter, his dignity unshaken. "I assure you, you're mistaken. I have every intention—" "Security!" Richard called, waving over two uniformed men who had been stationed near the entrance. "Please escort this gentleman out." The lobby fell silent. All eyes turned toward William, who stood perfectly still, his expression calm, but his eyes blazing. "You people always have excuses," Richard said, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Not today. Not in my hotel." The security guards approached, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Sir," one began, "please come with us." William looked directly at Richard. "You're making a mistake." Richard's face contorted with barely contained anger. "Get out now," he shouted, pointing dramatically toward the door. William held Richard's gaze for a long moment. Then, without another word, he turned and walked toward the exit, his back straight, his head high. The security guards followed a respectful distance behind, clearly relieved not to have to physically remove him. As he reached the revolving door, William caught sight of the young woman who had been recording. She quickly lowered her phone, but not before he noticed her horrified expression. Their eyes met briefly, and she gave him a small, sympathetic nod. Outside, William walked calmly down the street, turning into a quiet alleyway beside the hotel. He leaned against the brick wall, taking a deep breath. Memories flooded back. A younger William, decades ago, being turned away from a different hotel. The same dismissive looks, the same assumptions, the same humiliation. He had vowed then that someday he would change things. That promise had driven him to build his first hotel, then another, until he commanded respect in an industry that had once rejected him. Now, 50 years later, here he was again, thrown out of his own hotel. William pulled out his phone and dialed a familiar number. "Selena Johnson," answered a crisp female voice. "It's William," he said quietly. "How did it go?" Selena asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. "Worse than expected," William replied. "Activate Plan B. It's time I saw the rot for myself." "Already on it," Selena said. "Your paperwork is being processed through their system as we speak. Start date, tomorrow night. Maintenance staff." William smiled grimly. "Perfect." He ended the call and walked further down the alley, where a discreet black sedan waited. The driver, a man who had worked for William for 20 years, didn't ask questions as he opened the door. Before getting in, William looked back at the gleaming tower of the Bellcrest Grand. Its windows reflected the late afternoon sun, giving it a golden glow that belied the darkness within. "Don't worry," he murmured. "I'll be back soon." 2 days later, William Carter, now registered in the Bellcrest's employee database as Bill Carter, pushed a cleaning cart down the dimly lit service corridor of the hotel's 3rd floor. He wore a Navy maintenance uniform with Bill embroidered on the chest pocket and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. The night shift had begun an hour ago, and the halls were mostly empty save for the occasional late-night guest. William had been assigned to shadow Francisco Ramirez, a veteran janitor in his 60s who had been with the hotel for over 20 years. "So, Bill," Francisco said, demonstrating how to properly change the filters in an air conditioning unit, "what brings you to Bellcrest? Not many people your age starting new careers in maintenance." William smiled, handing Francisco a wrench. "Lost my previous job. Economy's tough. Can't afford to retire yet." Francisco nodded sympathetically. "I hear you. Been trying to get promoted. To maintenance supervisor for 15 years. Always passed over for younger guys." He secured the filter and closed the panel. "Last one was my own trainee. Nice kid, but..." He shrugged, the rest of the sentence hanging unspoken between them. "Their loss is my gain," William said. "I appreciate you showing me the ropes." Francisco smiled, the first genuine smile William had seen since arriving at the hotel. "You're a good listener, Bill. Rare quality these days." As they moved to the next task, William observed how meticulously Francisco worked despite his obvious fatigue. The man took pride in his job even when no one was watching. "How many rooms do we cover in a night?" William asked. "Too many," Francisco chuckled dryly. "Used to be 3 of us on this shift. Now it's just me, and you, I guess. Budget cuts." "But the hotel seems busy." "Oh, it's busy all right. Record bookings this quarter according to the staff meeting. But Mr. Langston says we need to optimize operations. That's fancy talk for making one person do the work of 3. They rounded a corner and nearly collided with Tasha from the front desk, who was hurriedly stuffing something into her purse. She jumped, startled by their appearance. "What are you doing up here?" she snapped, regaining her composure. "This floor is supposed to be cleaned after midnight." "Shvac maintenance," Francisco explained calmly. Room 312 reported a noise, training the new guy too. Tasha's eyes narrowed as she took in William's face. For a moment, he thought she might recognize him, but her gaze slid past him dismissively. "Well, hurry up," she said, "and keep it down. We have VIPs in 310. As she strode away, William noticed several hotel-branded pens and notepads poking out of her purse. "Does she always help herself to supplies?" he asked quietly. Francisco glanced around before answering. "That's nothing. Wait till you see how she pads her timesheet. Comes in late, leaves early, takes 2-hour lunches. But she's Langston's favorite, so..." He trailed off with a shrug. They continued their rounds, moving to the first floor where they found a door, marked management only. Francisco pulled out his master key. "Supply closet," he explained. "Need to restock." Inside, William was surprised to find not just cleaning supplies, but a small desk with a computer. "Sometimes I take my break in here," Francisco admitted. "It's quiet. No one bothers me." As Francisco gathered supplies, William noticed a pile of folders on the desk labeled "Maintenance Requests, Archived." Curious, he flipped through them while Francisco's back was turned. Most were routine: broken fixtures, plumbing issues, HVAC problems. But tucked between the pages, William found several complaint forms from employees. Sexual harassment claims, reports of wage theft, discrimination incidents, all marked resolved in red ink, though there was no indication of any actual resolution. "Find something interesting?" Francisco asked, making William jump slightly. "Just looking at the backlog." William covered smoothly. "Seems like a lot for one person." Francisco nodded. "Used to have a proper maintenance team. Now most of it gets ignored until a guest complains. Then it's an emergency." He closed the door behind them as they left, as they pushed their cart toward A. The kitchen for their next task, William heard raised voices from behind the swinging doors. I don't care what it costs. Find a cheaper supplier. Richard Langston's voice carried clearly into the hallway. But sir, we've already compromised on quality, replied a stressed male voice. The head chef is threatening to quit if we downgrade the ingredients any further. Let him. Chefs are replaceable. My bonus isn't. William and Francisco exchanged glances but said nothing as they waited for the argument to end. When Richard burst through the doors, his face was flushed with anger. He barely glanced at them before storming off toward the lobby. A few minutes later, as they cleaned the kitchen floors, William overheard two dishwashers whispering. He's meeting with that Jake guy again tonight, one said. Third time this month. The food supplier, the other asked. I thought we switched to National Foods. On paper, yeah, but Jake's company still delivers half our stuff. Unmarked trucks, middle of the night. My cousin works for National and says our order volumes don't match what they're delivering. William filed this information away. After finishing in the kitchen, they moved to the conference rooms, where a corporate event had ended hours earlier. We're supposed to deep clean, Francisco explained, but watch what really happens. He demonstrated a superficial wipe down of surfaces and a quick vacuum around the edges of the room. Langston times us, 20 minutes per room, no exceptions. Can't do it right in 20 minutes, but if we take longer. He drew a finger across his throat. As the night progressed, William noticed a young black woman working the overnight front desk. Unlike Tasha, she greeted each late arrival with genuine warmth, going out of her way to help a family with a fussy baby and an elderly couple confused about their room location. Who's that? William asked Francisco during their break. Jasmine. Taylor, Francisco replied. New hire, training for front desk. Good kid. Too good for this place if you ask me. Seems to care about the guests. That'll get beaten out of her soon enough, Francisco said grimly. Tasha's already making her life hell. Gives her all the worst shifts. Takes credit for her ideas. Around 2 a.m., William was mopping the lobby floor when he noticed the same young woman from 2 days ago, the one who had recorded his humiliation, entering the hotel. She approached Jasmine at the front desk. Welcome back to the Bellcrest Grand, Ms. Wright, Jasmine greeted her. How was your day? Interesting, the woman replied. And please call me Maya. William kept his head down, but positioned himself to hear their conversation. I was wondering, Maya said, lowering her voice, about that older gentleman who was asked to leave the other day, the one Mr. Langston had escorted out. Jasmine glanced around nervously. I wasn't working then, but I heard about it. Awful situation. You know if that's normal procedure here? Jasmine hesitated. I shouldn't say anything. I need this job. Maya nodded understandingly. Of course. I'm a travel blogger and I want to make sure I'm recommending the right places to my followers. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a late-night guest, and William moved on to clean elsewhere, but not before catching Maya's thoughtful gaze following him. Later that night, Francisco collapsed while cleaning a bathroom on the 5th floor. William found him leaning against the wall, breathing heavily, his face ashen. Francisco, are you all right? William knelt beside him, checking his pulse. Just dizzy, Francisco managed. Happens sometimes. Blood pressure. You need to sit down, maybe see a doctor. No doctors, Francisco said firmly. Can't afford to miss work. Langston already wrote me up twice this month for efficiency issues. William helped him to a chair in the hallway. Wait here. I'll finish this section. But your training, I've got it, William assured him. Rest. As William cleaned, he thought about Francisco, about Jasmine, about the corners being cut, the money being skimmed, the people being mistreated. His hands tightened around the mop handle until his knuckles turned white. The next morning, as his shift ended, William spotted Richard in his office, speaking with a heavy-set man in an ill-fitting suit. Through the partially open door, William could hear their conversation. Same arrangement as before, Jake, Richard was saying. 20% kickback, cash only. The board's sending auditors next week, so everything needs to look clean on paper. No problem, Jake replied, sliding an envelope across the desk. Already taken care of this month's consultation fee. William ducked out of sight as they concluded their meeting. Once Jake had left, William pulled out his phone and made a quick call. "Selena," he said quietly, "I need you to look into a supplier named Jake. Likely fake invoicing scheme with Langston. Also, I'm going to need audio surveillance equipment. Small and discreet." "Already ordered," Selena replied. "I anticipated you'd need it. Your room at the Bedford Arms has been extended indefinitely. How's the undercover work going?" "Illuminating," William said. "And infuriating. This place is worse than we thought." That evening, before his shift, William sat in a coffee shop across from the hotel, reviewing the notes he'd taken so far. His phone buzzed with a text from Selena. "Board meeting scheduled in 5 days. All members will be present." William smiled grimly. 5 days to gather enough evidence to clean house completely. He would need every minute. As he watched, he saw Maya exit the hotel and sit at an outdoor table, typing furiously on her laptop. A few minutes later, Jasmine emerged, still in her uniform, looking exhausted. Maya waved her over, and they began, talking intently. William observed as Jasmine's expression changed from cautious to concerned, to determined. She nodded at something Maya said, then handed her phone to Maya, who typed something into it. Allies, William thought. Good. He would need them too. He closed his notebook and headed back toward the hotel for his third night as a janitor. The Saus, small recording device Selena had delivered, was tucked securely in his pocket. Tonight, he would start gathering concrete evidence. As he entered through the staff door, he passed a bulletin board with a memo pinned prominently. Attention all. Staff, Board of Directors inspection scheduled for Friday, June 30th. All departments will be evaluated. Prepare accordingly. R. Langston, General Manager. William touched the memo lightly. Don't worry, Richard, he murmured. I'll make sure the board sees everything they need to see. He pushed his cart toward the elevator, ready for another night of discovering just how deep the corruption at his hotel really went. William's fourth night at the Belcrest Grand began with a discovery. As he made his way to the employee locker room to change into his uniform, he heard muffled sobbing coming from inside. He paused, then quietly pushed open the door. Jasmine Taylor sat on a bench between rows of lockers, her face buried in her hands. Her shoulders shook with each quiet sob, and she hadn't noticed his entrance. Excuse me, William said softly. Are you all right? Jasmine's head snapped up, her eyes wide and red-rimmed. She quickly wiped at her cheeks. I'm fine, Mr. Carter, she said, recognizing him from his previous shifts. Just taking a minute before I clock out. William hesitated, then sat down, on the bench, leaving respectful space between them. Sometimes a minute isn't enough, he said gently. Whatever it is, I'm happy to listen. Jasmine looked at him, weighing her options. Something in William's kind eyes must have reassured her. It's my mom, she finally said. She's in the hospital. Heart problems. The insurance is giving us trouble. And the bills are piling up. She twisted a tissue in her hands. I need this job, but Tasha, she's making it impossible. Takes credit for my work. Blames me for her mistakes. Today she accidentally spilled coffee on my only spare uniform. William nodded, his face a careful mask of sympathy that concealed his growing anger. And Mr. Langston just laughs it off. Jasmine continued. Says I need to develop thicker skin if I want to succeed in hospitality. Her voice broke. I don't know how much longer I can take it. Have you documented these incidents? William asked. Jasmine gave a hollow laugh. HR reports go straight to Langston. The last person who filed a complaint was fired 2 days later. For performance issues. William's jaw tightened. I see. I should go, Jasmine said, standing up. My mom's waiting for me to call. She hesitated. Please don't mention this to anyone. I really need this job. Your secret's safe with me, William promised. As Jasmine reached the door, he added, Miss Taylor? She turned back. Sometimes the right people are watching even when it seems they're not. Jasmine gave him a puzzled look, but nodded before leaving. William changed into his uniform, his mind racing. The corruption ran deeper than he'd thought, creating a culture of fear that allowed abuse to flourish. He needed more concrete evidence, and fast. An hour into his shift, while Francisco was taking inventory in another section, William found himself near a door marked "Electrical Access Only." Using the master key he'd been issued, he slipped inside. The room was cramped and dusty, filled with junction boxes and cable trays, but in the corner sat something unexpected: an old computer server with several external hard drives connected to it. William examined it closely. The labels indicated it was part of the hotel's security system, specifically archived CCTV footage, going back several years. A quick check of the file directory confirmed his suspicion. This was where all security footage was automatically backed up. He quickly located the footage from 3 days ago, the day he'd been humiliated and thrown out. The video clearly showed Richard's aggressive behavior and William's dignified exit. But more importantly, it showed Richard immediately afterward, smirking as he told a laughing Tasha, "That's how you handle those people." William copied the file onto the small USB drive he carried. Then, curious, he searched for other incidents. There were dozens of folders labeled HR Incident, followed by dates. He opened one at random. The footage showed a female employee being cornered in a storage room by a male manager. The woman's body language clearly indicated discomfort as the man leaned closer. After she managed to slip away, the timestamp showed the footage jumping ahead 2 minutes. Someone had edited out part of the encounter. William checked the corresponding HR file, which was also stored on the server. The complaint had been marked "Resolved, no evidence." The employee had been transferred to a different department, while the manager had received a promotion 2 weeks later. "Gotcha," William whispered, copying these files as well. A noise in the hallway startled him. He quickly closed the files and slipped out of the room, just as Francisco rounded the corner. "There you are," Francisco said. "Been looking all over. We've got a situation on the 3rd floor. Someone got sick in the hallway." William followed Francisco to the elevator, his mind still processing what he'd discovered. The corruption wasn't just financial, it was systemic, a cancer that had infected every part of the hotel's operations. Later that night, William was cleaning the executive offices when he overheard Richard in a meeting with a supplier in the adjacent conference room. The door was slightly ajar, and William positioned himself nearby, activating the recording device in his pocket. "Look," Richard was saying, "I don't care about your supply chain issues. You promised me a 20% discount if we went exclusive with your company." "And you're getting it," a man replied. "But on paper, we need to show the full price. The difference comes back to you through our consulting arrangement. Just make sure it's in cash this time," Richard said. "Last month's check was too traceable." "No problem," the supplier replied. "I've got it right here." William heard the sound of an envelope being slid across the table. "Perfect," Richard said. "Now about those cheaper linens you mentioned." William continued recording as they discussed substandard products being substituted for the luxury items the hotel advertised. By the time the meeting ended, he had over 30 minutes of damning evidence. As the supplier left, William ducked into a supply closet to avoid being seen. Through the partially open door, he watched Richard count a thick stack of bills before tucking it into his inner jacket pocket, a satisfied smile on his face. The next morning, as William was leaving, he spotted Maya in the hotel cafe, typing on her laptop. He considered approaching her but thought better of it. Instead, he texted Selena. "Need background check on Maya Wright. Travel blogger, possible ally." He was halfway to his temporary apartment when his phone buzzed with Selena's reply. "Maya Wright, 28, runs popular travel blog Right Around the World, 500K followers, known for exposing unethical practices in tourism industry. Recently did piece on racial discrimination in luxury hotels. Currently working on series about hospitality industry labor practices." William smiled. Perfect timing. That evening, William arrived early for his shift and positioned himself near the staff entrance. As expected, Maya appeared, waiting outside, as if hoping to accidentally bump into an employee. When Jasmine arrived for her shift, Maya approached her. William couldn't hear their conversation. but he saw Maya show Jasmine something on her phone that made the young woman's eyes widen. They spoke intently for several minutes, before Jasmine nodded and quickly entered the building. Maya lingered, looking around thoughtfully. Her gaze landed on William, and for a moment he thought she recognized him, but she simply nodded politely before walking back toward the main entrance. Inside, William found Francisco looking pale and moving slowly. "You feeling all right?" William asked. Francisco waved off his concern. "Just tired. Double shift yesterday when Johnson called in sick." They began their rounds, but it was clear Francisco wasn't well. His breathing was labored and he kept stopping to rest. "Maybe you should take a break," William suggested. "Can't," Francisco said stubbornly. "Langston's doing rounds tonight. If he catches me sitting down." As if summoned by his name, Richard appeared around the corner, his face like thunder. "Ramirez! Carter! Why isn't the mezzanine clean yet? The Palmer wedding starts in an hour." "We're on our way, sir," Francisco said, straightening up despite his obvious discomfort. "Don't give me excuses," Richard snapped. "Just do your job or I'll find someone who will." As Richard stalked away, Francisco took a step forward and suddenly staggered. William caught him just before he collapsed. "Francisco." William eased him down to the floor. "What's wrong?" "Chest. Tight," Francisco gasped. "Can't breathe right." William immediately pulled out his phone to call for help. Within minutes, paramedics arrived. As they loaded Francisco onto a stretcher, Richard reappeared, looking annoyed. "What's going on here?" "We have guests arriving." "He's having a medical emergency," William explained, struggling to keep his voice calm. Richard barely glanced at Francisco. "Fine. The ambulance can use the service entrance, and Carter, I expect the mezzanine finished before the wedding. No excuses." William's hands clenched into fists, and for a moment, he almost lost his composure. The urge to reveal himself, to put Richard in his place, was overwhelming. "Not yet," he whispered to himself, watching the paramedics wheel Francisco away, "but soon." Later that night, William was cleaning near the front desk when he overheard Tasha speaking to Jasmine. "Listen, newbie," Tasha hissed. "I don't know what you're playing at, but it stops now." "I don't know what you mean," Jasmine replied, her voice steady despite her obvious discomfort. "Don't play dumb. I saw you talking to that blogger. What did you tell her?" "Nothing that isn't true." Tasha stepped closer. "Let me make this very clear. Either you learn how things work around here, or you'll be looking for another job. And with your mother's medical bills, you can't afford that. Can you?" William froze. "How did Tasha know about Jasmine's mother? Are you threatening me?" Jasmine asked, her voice barely audible. "I'm educating you," Tasha replied with a cold smile. "This is how the real world works. Now, I'm going on break. When I get back, I expect you to have a better attitude." As Tasha walked away, William saw Jasmine take a deep, shaky breath. Her eyes met his across the lobby, and he gave her a small nod of encouragement. After a moment, she squared her shoulders and returned to her work, her dignity intact. William slipped away to call Selena. "How soon can we move?" he asked without preamble. "The board arrives day after tomorrow," Selena replied. "Everything's in place on our end. How's your evidence collection coming?" "Almost there," William said. "But I need one more thing. Can you check if a former employee named Angela Rollins still lives in the area? She was VP of Operations about 5 years ago, suddenly resigned." "On it," Selena promised. "Anything else?" William thought for a moment. "Yes. Book a room at the Bellcrest tomorrow night, under your own name. I think it's time we had some eyes on the inside." The next day, William used his break to visit Francisco in the hospital. The older man looked small in the hospital bed, attached to monitors and an IV drip. "Bill," Francisco said weakly, "you didn't have to come." "Of course I did," William replied, setting a small plant on the bedside table. "How are you feeling?" "Doctor says it was a minor heart attack. Need to rest, take medication." Francisco's expression darkened. "Langston called. Said if I'm not back in 3 days, he'll have to reevaluate my position." William's jaw tightened. "Don't worry about Langston. Francisco studied William's face. "There's something different about you, Bill. When Langston threatened me, you had a look in your eyes, like you wanted to tear him apart." William smiled slightly. "Maybe I did. Why do you care so much? You've only been here a week. Let's just say I recognize injustice when I see it," William replied. "And I've never been good at standing by." As William left the hospital, he checked his phone to find a message from Selena. "Angela Rollins located. Meeting arranged for tonight, 8 p.m. That evening, after his shift started, William slipped away to meet Angela at a quiet cafe several blocks from the hotel. She was a sharp-featured woman in her 50s, with shrewd eyes that assessed him carefully. "So you're the mysterious new owner," she said after they'd introduced themselves. "I wondered who was brave enough or foolish enough to take on the Bellcrest Group." "You know why I wanted to meet," William said. Angela nodded. "Langston. He was my protege once, believe it or not. Then I discovered the kickback scheme." She sipped her coffee. "When I confronted him, he had enough dirt on the previous owners to ensure they'd take his side. I was offered a generous severance in exchange for my silence. And you took it. I had a family to support," Angela said defensively, "but I kept copies of everything. Insurance, you might say." She slid a USB drive across the table. "Financial records, edited security footage, falsified maintenance logs. Everything you need to bury Langston and half the executive team." William took the drive. "Why give this to me now?" "Because you're actually looking," Angela said simply. "The previous owners didn't want to know. You do." She stood to leave. "Just be careful. Langston fights dirty when cornered." Back at the hotel, William was checking the executive hallway when he noticed the door to Richard's office slightly ajar. Voices drifted out, Richard and Tasha in heated conversation. "Can't just delete them," Tasha was saying. "It'll look suspicious." "I don't care how it looks," Richard replied. "If those complaints reach the board, we're finished. Just wipe the server and say it crashed." "And what about the blog woman? She's still hanging around." "I'll handle her," Richard said dismissively. "As for Taylor, find a reason to fire her tomorrow. We can't risk her talking to the board." "Consider it done," Tasha replied with satisfaction. William ducked into a side room as they exited. Once they were gone, he slipped into Richard's office and quickly connected Angela's USB drive to the computer. He copied its contents, then started searching through Richard's files. Most were protected, but a few folders were accessible. William found what he was looking for in an email folder labeled Board Meeting Prep. Richard had prepared a presentation filled with falsified performance, metrics, and doctored financial statements, designed to show the hotel in the best possible light. William copied these files as well, then carefully exited the office. Tomorrow was the board meeting. Tonight would be his last night gathering evidence. As his shift ended the next morning, William received a text from Selena. "In position, room 712. William took the elevator to the 7th floor and knocked softly on the door to room 712. Selena opened it, elegant as always in a tailored suit. "Well," she said, looking at his janitor's uniform with amusement, "this is a new look for you." William smiled tiredly. "How's the room?" "Overpriced. Shower pressure's weak. Found a hair in the bathtub." Selena ushered him inside. "But that's not why we're here. Show me what you've got." For the next hour, they reviewed the evidence William had collected: security footage, financial records, employee complaints, audio recordings of Richard's kickback arrangements, Angela's files. It was overwhelming. "This is worse than we thought," Selena said finally. "The entire management structure is corrupt." "Not everyone," William corrected her. "There are good people here too. Jasmine, Francisco. Others who've been intimidated into silence." Selena nodded. "The board arrives at 3 p.m. What's our play?" "I'll continue as planned," William said. "One more shift, then I'll meet you before the board meeting." As he left Selena's room, William didn't notice Tasha watching from the end of the hallway. Her eyes narrowed in suspicion. William's final shift began uneventfully. The hotel was buzzing with preparation for the board's arrival. Staff scurried about, polishing, cleaning, and arranging fresh flowers under Richard's watchful eye. The Bellcrest Board of Directors will conduct their quarterly review today at 3 p.m., Richard announced at the morning staff meeting. Everything must be perfect. Anyone who disrupts this inspection will be terminated immediately. His gaze swept the room, lingering meaningfully on Jasmine, who sat stiffly in the back row. William, in his janitor's uniform, remained unnoticed, in the corner. After the meeting, William overheard Richard speaking to his assistant. "Make sure all the financial reports are ready," Richard instructed. "And remember, the occupancy numbers need to reflect what we discussed." "Yes, sir," the assistant replied nervously. "And what about the maintenance backlog?" "What backlog?" Richard smiled coldly. "As far as the board is concerned, we're fully up to date." As the day progressed, William methodically completed his tasks while making final observations. He noticed Tasha in deep conversation with Richard. Occasionally, glancing in his direction, something about their manner put him on alert. During his lunch break, William met briefly with Maya in the hotel cafe. "Everything set on your end?" he asked quietly. Maya nodded. "Ready when you are. But are you sure about this?" "Once it goes public, that's exactly what I want," William said firmly. "Some things need sunlight to be cleansed." He returned to work, aware that time was running short. As he was cleaning a bathroom on the 3rd floor, his phone buzzed with a text from Selena. "Problem. Tasha asking questions about you at front desk. May have recognized you." William frowned. He needed to accelerate his timeline. He texted back, "Move forward. Meet in lobby at 2:30. Just as he sent the message, he heard footsteps approaching. He quickly pocketed his phone and resumed cleaning. "Well, well," came Richard's voice from the doorway. "If it isn't our newest janitor." William turned slowly. Richard stood with arms crossed, Tasha just behind him, a triumphant smile on her face. "Mr. Langston," William acknowledged calmly. "Funny thing," Richard said, stepping closer. "Tasha here noticed you coming out of a guest room this morning, room 7112, registered to a Selena Johnson." William said nothing, so I had security check. "The cameras," Richard continued. "You've been all over this hotel, accessing areas you shouldn't, talking to people you shouldn't." His smile was predatory. "Care to explain?" "Just doing my job," William replied evenly. "Your job?" Richard laughed. "I don't think so. In fact, I'm starting to think you're not who you claim to be." He gestured to a security guard who had appeared behind him. "Check his locker." Minutes later, they stood in the staff room as the guard pulled a small plastic bag from William's locker. Inside was a stack of cash, money William had never seen before. "Well, look at that," Richard said with mock surprise. "Stolen from the gift shop register, I believe. That's a fireable offense, and possibly criminal." William looked at the planted evidence, then back at Richard's smug face. "You really have no idea who I am, do you?" Richard's smile faltered slightly. "You're a thief who's about to be escorted out of my hotel." "Your hotel?" William repeated quietly. Before Richard could respond, the staff room door opened, and Selena walked in, immaculately dressed and radiating authority. Behind her stood a middle-aged man in an expensive suit. "Is there a problem here?" Selena asked, coolly. Richard turned, annoyance flashing across his face. "Excuse me, this is a staff area. Guests aren't allowed." "I'm not a guest," Selena interrupted. "I'm Selena Johnson, Executive Vice President of Carter Hospitality Group." She gestured to the man beside her. "And this is James Wilson, our legal counsel." Richard blinked in confusion. "Carter Hospitality? What does that have to do with—" "Everything," William said, straightening to his full height. He removed his janitor's cap and looked Richard directly in the eyes. "Because I'm William Carter, CEO of Carter Hospitality Group and the new majority, owner of the Bellcrest chain." The color drained from Richard's face as recognition dawned. You're the man you threw out of the lobby 4 days ago," William confirmed. "The man you just tried to frame for theft." Tasha took a step back, her triumphant smile replaced by shock. The security guard looked uncertainly between William and Richard, clearly unsure who he should be listening to. James Wilson stepped forward, opening his briefcase. Mr. Langston, we have documentation confirming Mr. Carter's 51% ownership stake in the Bellcrest Group effective as of last Monday. He handed Richard a folder. You might want to review this before taking any further action against your employer. Richard stared at the documents, his hands shaking slightly. This is some kind of trick. No trick, William said calmly. Just due diligence. I wanted to see how my new property was being run, from the inside. His expression hardened. What I found was disappointing, to say the least. The silence in the room was deafening. Finally, Richard attempted to recover, plastering on a smile. Mr. Carter, there's clearly been a misunderstanding. If I'd known who you were, that's exactly the problem. William cut him off. You shouldn't treat anyone the way you treated me, whether they own the hotel or not. The staff room door opened again, and Jasmine appeared, stopping short when she saw the tense tableau. Jasmine. William greeted her with a warm smile. Perfect timing. Could you please inform the front desk that I'd like all staff and available guests to gather in the main lobby in 15 minutes? It seems we need to have a hotel-wide meeting. Jasmine looked between William in his janitor's uniform and Richard's ashen face, putting the pieces together. A slow smile spread across her face. Right away, Mr. Carter, she said with newfound confidence before hurrying away. Richard took a step toward William. Listen, we can discuss this privately. There's no need to make a scene. I disagree, William replied coldly. You seemed quite comfortable making a scene when you thought I was beneath you. Now you'll experience the other side. As word spread through the hotel, staff members began gathering in the lobby, whispering amongst themselves. Guests paused their comings and goings, intrigued by the unusual assembly. William changed quickly into the suit Selina had brought him, then made his way to the lobby. As he emerged from the elevator, a hush fell over the crowd. He walked to the center of the space, the same spot where Richard had humiliated him days earlier. Richard and Tasha stood to one side, their faces rigid with suppressed panic. Maya was positioned near the front desk, her phone discreetly recording. Jasmine stood tall at her station, a small smile playing at her lips. Just then, a group of well-dressed men and women entered through the main doors, the Bellcrest Board of Directors, arriving for their scheduled meeting. Perfect timing, William said, extending his hand to the lead board member. Douglas, good to see you again. Douglas Thompson, chairman of the Bellcrest Board, shook William's hand with visible confusion. William, what's going on here? We were told you wouldn't be joining us until next week's official announcement. Change of plans, William replied. I decided to conduct my own inspection first. He gestured around the lobby. And I'm afraid we have some serious issues to discuss. Richard pushed forward. Mr. Thompson, sir, I can explain. William held up a hand, silencing him. No, Richard, you've done enough talking. He turned to face the assembled crowd. For those who don't know me, my name is William Carter. As of last week, I am the majority owner of the Bellcrest Hotel Group. Murmurs spread through the crowd. My first experience at this hotel was being thrown out by Mr. Langston here, who assumed I was homeless because of how I looked. William's voice carried clearly across the lobby. Rather than reveal my identity, I decided to see how this hotel really operates, by working as a janitor for the past 4 days. Gasps and whispers erupted from the staff. Richard's face had gone from pale to mottled red. What I discovered was troubling, William continued. Kickback schemes, falsified records, harassment covered up, hard-working employees mistreated, standards ignored. He looked directly at Richard. A culture of disrespect that starts at the top and infects everything. William nodded to Selina, who stepped forward with a tablet. I've compiled evidence of multiple violations of company policy, ethical standards, and possibly the law. He handed the tablet to Douglas. The board will want to review this immediately. Douglas took the tablet, his expression grave as he scrolled through the first few documents. The other board members gathered around, their faces showing increasing concern. Richard lunged forward. This is a setup. He's trying to make me look bad to justify a takeover. The only person making you look bad is you, Richard, William replied, calmly. The evidence speaks for itself. Douglas looked up from the tablet. Mr. Langston, Ms. Wilson, please go to the conference room. The board needs to speak with you immediately. His tone left no room for argument. As security escorted Richard and Tasha away, William addressed the remaining staff. Changes will be coming to the Bellcrest Grand. But I want to be clear about something. I didn't buy this hotel chain to destroy it. I bought it to restore it to what it should be. A place where every guest is treated with dignity and respect, regardless of how they look or what they're wearing. He paused, looking around at the faces watching him. And just as importantly, a place where staff are valued, protected, and given the tools to succeed. He spotted Francisco's replacement, an older man who had been training under him. "How is Francisco doing?" William asked. The man looked surprised to be addressed directly. "Stable, sir, but worried about his job." "Tell him his position is secure," William said firmly, "and that we'll be reviewing the medical benefits package immediately." William walked over to Jasmine, who stood straighter as he approached. "Miss E. Taylor," he said with a smile. "I believe we have a manager position opening up soon. Interested?" Jasmine's eyes widened. "Sir, I've only been here a few months, and in that time you've shown more professionalism and humanity than those who've been here for years," William replied. "Think about it." He turned back to address the entire lobby. "In exactly 9 minutes, I'll be meeting with the board to discuss the future of this hotel. By the end of that meeting, some of you will no longer be employed here." His gaze swept across the nervous faces. "Not because of your position or your background, but because of your actions and your character." William straightened his tie and looked directly at the spot where Richard had stood when he'd ordered William to leave. "4 days ago, I was told to get out of my own hotel," he said quietly. "Today, those who don't deserve to be here will be the ones leaving." With that, William nodded to Selena and the board members and walked toward the conference room, leaving a lobby full of stunned staff and curious guests in his wake. Behind him, Maya lowered her phone, a satisfied smile on her face. The story she'd just captured would change much more than just one hotel. The Bellcrest Grand's main conference room had never felt so small. William Carter sat at the head of the polished mahogany table, with the board members arrayed on either side. Richard Langston and Tasha Wilson stood at the far end, looking like defendants awaiting sentencing. Douglas Thompson, the board chairman, cleared his throat. "This is unprecedented, to say the least." "Necessary, though," William replied, his voice calm but firm. "Sometimes you need to see things from the ground level to understand what's really happening." The conference room doors opened, and Selena entered with James Wilson, William's lawyer. They carried additional tablets and folders, which they distributed to each board member. "What you're receiving," William explained, "is a comprehensive report of my findings during my time working undercover at this hotel. Financial discrepancies, harassment cover-ups, maintenance violations, labor law infractions, and those are just the highlights." Richard stepped forward, desperation evident in his stance. "Board members, I urge you to consider the source of these allegations. Mr. Carter spent less than a week here. How could he possibly—" "5 days was more than enough," William interrupted. "But don't take my word for it." He nodded to Selena, who tapped her tablet. The large screen on the wall came to life, showing security footage of Richard yelling at William in the lobby days earlier. "You people always have excuses," Richard's recorded voice echoed through the room. "Not today. Not in my hotel." The board members shifted uncomfortably. Douglas's face darkened. "And that was just my first day," William said. "Shall we continue?" For the next 20 minutes, William presented a damning sequence of evidence. Audio recordings of Richard arranging kickbacks, CCTV footage of harassment incidents that had been officially resolved, financial records showing systematic embezzlement, and maintenance logs that had been falsified to hide serious safety violations. As each new piece of evidence appeared on screen, Richard's protests grew weaker, while Tasha stood in stunned silence, her earlier defiance evaporating. "This USB drive," William said, holding up Angela's contribution, contains 5 years' worth of similar evidence compiled by your former VP of Operations, Angela Rollins, whom you forced out when she tried to address these issues. Angela was let go for performance reasons, one board member objected weakly. William raised an eyebrow. Really? Then perhaps you'd like to explain this email thread between Mr. Langston and the previous CEO, discussing how to handle the Angela situation before she could, quote, blow the whistle. The evidence was displayed on screen, leaving no room for denial. We weren't aware of these details, Douglas admitted, looking increasingly uncomfortable. That's the problem, William replied. You weren't aware or you chose not to be. Either way, it ends today. He stood and walked around the table, his presence commanding despite his age. I didn't buy into this company to destroy it, William said. I have a vision for what the Bellcrest can be, what it should be. But that vision can't coexist with the corruption I've witnessed. A knock at the door interrupted them. Selena opened it to find Maya standing outside, tablet in hand. I apologize for the interruption, Maya said. But there's something the board should see. William nodded. This is Maya Wright, a travel journalist who witnessed my initial interaction with Mr. Langston. Maya stepped forward. My live stream of today's events has gone viral. Over 50,000 viewers watched Mr. Carter reveal his identity, and the comments are overwhelmingly supportive. She handed her tablet to Douglas. More importantly, I've received dozens of messages from former Bellcrest employees and guests sharing similar experiences of discrimination and poor treatment. The board members exchanged alarmed glances. This isn't just an internal matter anymore, Maya continued. It's becoming a public relations situation. Richard finally exploded. This is a coordinated attack. She's working with him. He pointed accusingly at William. He brought her here to set me up. William shook his head. Actually, Ms. Wright was already investigating reports of discrimination at luxury hotels when she happened to witness how you treated me. Sometimes the truth finds its own way to the surface. Douglas handed Maya's tablet back and turned to his fellow board members. I think we need to discuss this privately. He looked at William. Would you mind stepping out while we deliberate? Of course, William replied. He gestured for Richard and Tasha to leave as well. In the hallway outside, Richard paced frantically while Tasha leaned against the wall, her face ashen. William stood calmly near Maya, who was updating her followers on her phone. You won't get away with this, Richard hissed at William. You think you can just walk in and take over? The board knows me. They trust me. Do they? William asked quietly. Or do they just trust the falsified numbers you've been feeding them? Before Richard could respond, the conference room door opened and Douglas emerged. We've reached a decision, he announced. Please come back in. Inside, the atmosphere had shifted. The board members sat straighter, their earlier discomfort replaced by resolution. Mr. Langston, Douglas began, in light of the overwhelming evidence presented today, the board has voted unanimously to terminate your employment, effective immediately. He turned to Tasha. The same applies to you, Ms. Wilson. Richard's face contorted in rage. You can't do this. I've given 10 years to this company. And in those 10 years, Douglas replied sternly, you've apparently violated our code of ethics, our financial policies, and possibly several laws. He looked to the security personnel standing by the door. Please escort Mr. Langston and Ms. Wilson to HR to process their termination, then off the premises. They are not to return to their offices unescorted. As security moved forward, Richard lunged suddenly toward William. This is your fault. You don't belong here. The security guards caught Richard before he could reach William, restraining him as he continued to shout. Funny, William said, his voice cutting through Richard's tirade. That's what you said the first time, but I own here. The room fell silent as Richard's struggles subsided. The reality of his situation finally seemed to sink in. Get them out, Douglas ordered, and the guards led the disgraced employees away. Once they were gone, Douglas turned to William. Mr. Carter, on behalf of the board, I offer our sincere apologies for what you experienced. He hesitated. We should have been more vigilant. Yes, you should have, William agreed without rancor. But now we have an opportunity to do better. He looked around the table. I'd like to address the staff. They deserve to know what's happening. Minutes later, William stood in the lobby, facing the assembled hotel employees. News of Richard and Tasha's termination had already spread, creating an atmosphere of nervous anticipation. Today marks a turning point for the Bellcrest Grand, William began. What happened here, the discrimination, the corruption, the mistreatment, wasn't just the action of one or two individuals. It was the result of a culture that lost sight of what hospitality truly means. He walked slowly through the group, making eye contact with various staff members. Hospitality isn't about appearances. It isn't about treating some people better than others based on how they look or what they're wearing. It's about dignity, the dignity we afford our guests and the dignity we afford each other. William stopped beside Jasmine, who stood tall despite the tears shining in her eyes. Some of you maintained your integrity, even when it was difficult. Some of you treated people with respect, even when your superiors didn't. Those are the people who represent the future of this hotel. He turned to face the entire group again. As a Dory of today, I'm implementing a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination of any kind. I'm establishing an independent ethics office that reports directly to me, and I'm ordering a comprehensive review of our hiring, promotion, and compensation practices to ensure fairness across the board. William noticed several staff members exchange worried glances. Change can be uncomfortable, he acknowledged. Some of you may be wondering if you still have a place here. The answer depends not on your title or your tenure, but on your character and your willingness to embrace a new direction. He gestured to Selena, who stepped forward with a stack of business cards. These cards have a confidential hotline number. If you've witnessed misconduct that hasn't been addressed, or if you have ideas for improving how we operate, call this number. It connects directly to my office. As Selena distributed the cards, William continued. The board meeting has concluded, and those who abused their positions are no longer employed here. But this isn't the end. It's a beginning. He looked around at the mixture of relief, hope, and uncertainty on the faces before him. 9 minutes, William said softly. That's how long it took from when I was thrown out of this lobby to when I decided this hotel needed new leadership. Sometimes the most important moments in our lives happen in the blink of an eye. He smiled. Let's make every moment count from now on. With that, he nodded to the assembled staff and walked toward the elevator, leaving a lobby full of people with much to think about. 2 weeks after what hotel staff had taken to calling the reckoning, William sat in his newly established office at the Bellcrest Grand, reviewing the changes that had already been implemented. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the space that had once been Richard's domain, but now felt entirely different. Gone were the ostentatious decorations and imposing furniture designed to intimidate. In their place stood simple, elegant pieces that made the room feel welcoming rather than forbidding. On the wall hung a framed photo of the hotel's original grand opening from 1962, a reminder of its legacy and potential. A knock at the door interrupted William's thoughts. "Come in," he called. Selena entered, followed by a parade of familiar faces. Jasmine, Francisco, looking much recovered, Maya, and several other staff members who had emerged as natural leaders during the transition. "The resignations are still coming in," Selena reported, placing a folder on William's desk. 7 more this morning, all from Richard's inner circle. William nodded, unsurprised. They see the writing on the wall. They're scared, Jasmine, added. The new transparency policies mean they can't hide their behavior anymore. Since the reckoning, nearly a quarter of the management team had resigned rather than face the new accountability measures. Most had been direct reports to Richard or Tasha, complicit in their schemes or beneficiaries of their favoritism. "Let them go," William said. "It makes room for those who deserve advancement." He turned to Francisco, who stood taller despite the cane he now used. "How are you feeling?" "Better every day, Mr. Carter," Francisco replied with a smile. "The new healthcare plan is helping. My doctor was shocked when I told him about the coverage improvements. One of William's first actions had been to overhaul the employee benefits package. particularly the medical coverage that had been steadily stripped away under Richard's cost-cutting measures. "And how's the training going for your new position?" William asked. Francisco beamed. "The team is responding well. Turns out they respect someone who's actually done the job, not just read about it in a manual." William had appointed Francisco as director of facilities, giving him authority over the department where he'd been overlooked for decades. His practical knowledge and genuine concern for his colleagues made him a natural leader. "I have the employee satisfaction survey results," Maya said, stepping forward. As part of her new role as communications consultant, she had been helping to gauge staff morale during the transition. "Overall positive, but there's still uncertainty. Many are waiting to see if the changes stick." "Understandable," William acknowledged. "Trust takes time to build, especially after it's been broken so thoroughly." Jasmine, now assistant guest relations manager, cleared her throat. "We've had an unusual request, sir. Tasha Wilson has asked to meet with me." William raised an eyebrow. "For what purpose?" "She didn't say, just that it was important and private." William considered this. "It's your decision, Jasmine, but take someone with you if you go." Jasmine nodded, her newfound confidence evident in her posture. The timid front desk trainee William had first met was transforming into a poised professional. After the meeting concluded and the others filed out, Selena remained behind, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Something on your mind?" William asked. "You've been spending a lot of time here," she observed. "The other properties in the Bellcrest group need attention too." William sighed. "I know, but this one is special." "Because it's where you were humiliated?" "Because it's where I saw both. The worst and the best of what this industry can be." William corrected her. Francisco's dedication despite mistreatment. Jasmine's kindness in the face of harassment. They reminded me why I started in this business in the first place. Selena smiled. "You've always had a soft spot for underdogs." "Takes one to know one," William replied with a wry smile, remembering his own humble beginnings. Later that afternoon, William walked through the hotel, observing the subtle but significant changes already taking place. Staff greeted guests with genuine warmth rather than practice scripts. When a guest spilled coffee in the lobby, 2 employees rushed to help without casting blame or showing annoyance. Small things, perhaps, but indicative of a shifting culture. As he passed the front desk, he noticed a commotion at the entrance. A group of well-dressed executives was arriving, led by a man whose imperious manner reminded William uncomfortably of Richard. "I don't care what your system says," the man was saying loudly to Jasmine. "I booked the presidential suite. Nothing else is acceptable." William approached quietly, watching as Jasmine handled the situation. "I understand your frustration, Mr. Harrington," she said calmly. "There was an emergency plumbing issue in the presidential suite this morning. I've arranged for you to have our ambassador suite, which is actually larger, and we've adjusted the rate accordingly." The man's face reddened. "Do you know who I am? I don't want a discount, I want what I reserved." William was about to step in when Jasmine straightened, meeting the man's gaze directly. "Sir, I've offered the best available solution to an unfortunate situation. You're welcome to check other hotels, but I doubt you'll find comparable accommodations on such short notice. The choice is yours, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention that our ambassador suite does include a private balcony with a view the presidential suite doesn't offer." The man blinked, caught off guard by her composure. After a moment, he nodded, grudgingly. "Fine, but I expect everything to be perfect." "Of course," Jasmine replied with a genuine smile. "We'll make sure of it." As the group moved toward the elevators, Jasmine noticed William and gave him a small nod of acknowledgement. He returned it with a proud smile before continuing his walkthrough. That evening, William visited the hotel kitchen, where the executive chef was conducting a staff meeting. "Mr. Carter," the chef said, surprised. "We weren't expecting you." "Just observing," William assured him. "Please continue." The chef turned back to his team. "As I was saying, the new sourcing guidelines mean we'll be working with local farmers and producers whenever possible. Yes, some items will cost more, but Mr. Carter has approved the budget increase because quality matters." William nodded, pleased. The chef had initially been skeptical of the changes, having adapted to years of cost-cutting under Richard's management. But when William explained his vision for the hotel's dining experience, the chef had embraced the opportunity to return to the culinary standards he'd once prided himself on. After the meeting, the chef approached William privately. "I've been meaning to thank you," he said. "For years I've been compromising my standards because I was told profit margins were all that mattered. It feels good to cook with pride again." "Your team seems energized," William observed. "They are. Turnover was a huge problem before. We couldn't keep good line cooks because the conditions and pay were so poor. Now I've actually got a waiting list of applicants." Word was spreading through the hospitality community about the changes at the Belcrest Grand. Where once it had been known as a prestigious but toxic workplace, it was quickly gaining a reputation as a place where talent was valued and ethical practices were the norm. As William left the kitchen, his phone rang. It was Jasmine. "Sir, I met with Tasha," she said without preamble. She gave me a letter for you." "A letter?" "She's moved to a small town upstate. Said she's been doing a lot of thinking about her behavior here." Jasmine paused. The letter seemed sincere. She also apologized to me directly. William was surprised but cautiously optimistic. People can change when confronted with the consequences of their actions. Bring the letter to my office tomorrow. After hanging up, William made his way to the staff locker room, which was empty at this hour. He stood looking at the space, remembering his first days as Bill the janitor. On a bulletin board hung an old employee photo, taken during more prosperous times for the hotel. The faces looked happier, more engaged than the staff he'd initially encountered. An idea formed in William's mind. He pulled out his phone and texted Selena. "Arrange for a photographer tomorrow. All staff photo, and find the old maintenance uniform I used." The next morning, William called an all-staff meeting in the grand ballroom. Employees from every department gathered, curious about the unexpected assembly. "Over the past 2 weeks," William began, "you've all been part of an extraordinary transformation. What happened here wasn't just a change in management, it was a fundamental shift in values." He walked through the crowd, making eye contact with faces both familiar and new. The Belcrest name once stood for excellence not just in luxury, but in humanity. Somewhere along the way, that purpose was lost. Together, we're finding it again. William gestured to a large screen where before and after guest satisfaction scores were displayed. The improvement was dramatic. These numbers tell part of the story, but they don't capture the most important changes. The renewed pride in your work, the genuine care for our guests, the respect you show each other. He moved to stand beside Francisco and Jasmine. "Some of you were doing the right thing even when it was difficult. Others have embraced our new direction with enthusiasm. All of you are essential to our success going forward." William nodded to Selena, who stepped forward with a garment bag. From it, she removed the janitor's uniform William had worn during his undercover work. "Leadership isn't about titles or corner offices," William said, holding up the uniform. "It's about service. It's about dignity. Sometimes it's about being willing to sweep your own floors to understand what's really happening in your house." He gestured to the photographer waiting at the back of the room. "Today, we're taking a new staff photo, one that represents who we truly are and who we aspire to be." William slipped the janitor's jacket over his dress shirt. "And I'll be wearing this, as a reminder to myself and everyone else that no job in this hotel is beneath notice or respect." A spontaneous applause broke out, growing louder as William stood among his employees, no longer the distant owner, but a leader who had walked in their shoes. As the photographer arranged the group, Francisco leaned over to William. "You know, when you first started as a janitor, I thought there was something different about you," he said. "I just couldn't put my finger on it." William smiled. "What was it?" "You listened," Francisco said simply. "Really listened. That's rarer than you might think." The camera flashed, capturing the moment. William at the center, surrounded by the people who made the Belcrest Grand what it was meant to be. Not just employees, but partners in a vision of hospitality where everyone was treated with dignity. regardless of which side of the front desk they stood on. Later, as William reviewed the photo in his office, he noticed something remarkable. The smiles weren't forced or practiced. They were genuine, the expressions of people who felt valued and respected. A knock at his door revealed Jasmine with Tasha's letter. "Here it is, sir," she said, handing him the envelope. After she left, William opened it carefully, unsure what to expect. "Mr. Carter," the letter began. "Words cannot express my regret for my behavior at the Bellcrest. For years I followed Richard's example, believing that success meant stepping on others to rise. I was wrong. Watching how you treated people, even after how we treated you, has forced me to reconsider everything. I'm starting over in a new town, with a new perspective. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that your actions changed at least one person's view of what leadership truly means. With sincere regret and gratitude, Tasha Wilson." William set the letter down, a thoughtful expression on his face. Redemption was possible, even for those who seemed furthest from it. That, perhaps, was the most important lesson of all. He turned to look out the window at the city below, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. From being thrown out of his own hotel to transforming it from within, the path had been unexpected but necessary. The photo on his desk, of himself in a janitor's uniform surrounded by smiling staff, would serve as a daily reminder of a simple truth. Sometimes, you have to walk through the dirt to find what's truly clean. 1 month after the transformation of the Bellcrest Grand began, William Carter sat in a private meeting room with Selena and a team of financial auditors. Spread across the table were reports from every Bellcrest property across the country, 17 hotels in total. "It's not just this location," said Rebecca Chen, the lead auditor. "We found similar patterns of financial irregularities at 12 other Bellcrest properties." She slid a folder toward William. "The corruption appears systemic." William opened the folder, scanning the highlighted discrepancies. Kickback schemes, padded invoices, ghost employees. The same tactics Richard had employed replicated across the chain. "It seems Mr. Langston learned his methods from someone higher up," Selena observed. William nodded grimly. "The fish rots from the head." He turned to Rebecca. "How high does this go?" "Based on approval signatures and communication trails, at least to the executive vice president level, possibly higher." Rebecca hesitated. "This may implicate several board members, Mr. Carter." William leaned back in his chair, his expression serious but unsurprised. "Then we keep digging." Selena looked concerned. "William, the board already seems uncomfortable with how far you've taken the investigation here. Expanding it chain-wide will cause significant backlash." "Let it," William replied calmly. "I didn't buy this company to preserve a corrupt status quo." As the meeting concluded, William's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Need to speak with you privately. Information about Bellcrest Corporate you should know. Angela Rollins." William raised an eyebrow. The former VP hadn't contacted him since providing the USB drive of evidence against Richard. He showed the message to Selena. "Could be valuable," she said cautiously. "But be careful. The more you disturb this hornet's nest, the more aggressive the response will be." "Arrange a meeting," William decided. "Somewhere discreet." That evening, as William reviewed more financial reports in his office, Jasmine knocked on his door. "Mr. Carter, Maya Wright is here to see you. Says it's urgent." William nodded. "Send her in." Maya entered, tablet in hand, looking both excited and concerned. "Mr. Carter, I thought you should see this before it breaks publicly." She placed her tablet in front of him, displaying a financial news website with the headline, "Bellcrest Group Board Moves to Limit New Owners' Authority." William scanned the article quickly. "They're claiming I'm acting rashly and damaging the brand. Interesting timing." "There's more," Maya said, swiping to another page. "A PR firm has been hired to run what they're calling a reputation management campaign. But my sources say it's really about discrediting you before you can expose more corruption." William smiled thinly. "They're scared." "They should be," Maya replied. My expose on the Bellcrest Grand has gone viral. I've received hundreds of messages from employees at other luxury hotels reporting similar issues. She hesitated. And I've been approached by several former Bellcrest corporate employees willing to talk on the record about questionable practices. William considered this. How soon can you publish? 3 days, if I push. But I need more solid financial evidence to back up their claims. William exchanged a glance with Selina, who nodded almost imperceptibly. You'll have it by tomorrow, he promised. The next morning, William met Angela Rawlins at a quiet cafe several blocks from the hotel. She looked nervously over her shoulder as she sat down. Thank you for meeting me, she said, her voice low. I wouldn't have reached out if it wasn't important. I'm listening, William said. Angela pulled out a small thumb drive. After I gave you those files about Langston, I kept digging into my old records. What I found. She pushed the drive across the table. There's a laundering operation running through the Bellcrest's international reservation system. They're using fake bookings to clean money for some very dangerous people. William's expression remained neutral, but his eyes sharpened. And Richard was part of this? A small part, just enough to be useful, not enough to understand the full scope. Angela leaned forward. The board members who protected him? They're neck deep in it. That's a serious accusation, William said carefully. What evidence do you have? It's all on the drive. Account numbers, transaction patterns, communications. Angela glanced around nervously. I've already booked a flight out of town. When this breaks, I don't want to be anywhere nearby. William pocketed the drive. I appreciate the risk you're taking. Angela smiled sadly. I should have done more years ago. Maybe things wouldn't have gotten this bad. She stood to leave. One more thing. Watch out for Thomas Wells on your board. He's more dangerous than the others. After Angela left, William immediately called Selina. We need to move faster than we planned, he told her. Contact James Wilson and have him prepare for potential criminal charges and increase security at all our properties, especially the Grand. Back at the hotel, William found an email waiting from Douglas Thompson, the board chairman. Emergency board meeting called for tomorrow, 9 a.m. Agenda: review of W. Carter's management decisions and authority limitations. Attendance mandatory. Right, on schedule, William murmured. He spent the afternoon reviewing Angela's files with his legal team, uncovering a sophisticated money laundering scheme that had been operating for years. By evening, he had forwarded key evidence to both Maya and federal authorities. As William prepared to leave for the day, Francisco knocked on his door. Sir, there's someone in the lobby asking for you. Says her name is Angela Rawlins. William froze. Angela? I just met with her this morning. She said she was leaving town. Francisco looked confused. Well, she's downstairs now. Seems pretty agitated. William's instincts flared. Call security quietly. Have them stand by. I'll go down to meet her. In the lobby, a woman who resembled Angela paced nervously near the front desk. But as William approached, he noticed subtle differences. Her posture, the way she moved. Ms. Rawlins? He said carefully. She turned, relief washing over her face. Mr. Carter, thank goodness. I've been trying to reach you. Her voice was slightly higher than Angela's. We need to talk privately about the information I sent you. William maintained a neutral expression. Of course. Let's use my office. He gestured toward the elevators, signaling discreetly to the security personnel positioned nearby. As they walked, William texted Selina. Contact Angela immediately. Confirm location. In the elevator, the woman fidgeted with her purse. I'm sorry for the unexpected visit. But after I sent that file, I realized there were details I forgot to explain. William nodded. No problem at all. Always better to be thorough. His phone buzzed with Selina's reply. Angela confirmed on flight to Chicago. Left 3 hours ago. Be careful. The elevator doors opened, and William led the woman down the hallway, security following at a discreet distance. As they approached his office, he deliberately took a wrong turn. Oh, excuse me, he said, still getting used to the layout. The woman's expression tightened. No problem. That small slip confirmed his suspicions. Anyone who knew him would know he'd been working from this office for weeks. Actually, William said, stopping abruptly, I think we should continue this conversation with security present. The woman's hand darted into her purse, but before she could withdraw whatever she was reaching for, security personnel moved in, restraining her. Who are you? William demanded. She glared at him, silent. A search of her purse revealed a recording device and a small canister of what appeared to be pepper spray. There was also an ID for a private security firm known for corporate espionage. Have the police take her statement? William instructed security. And increase patrols around the building. That night, William received another text from Selena. Angela called. She's safe, but someone broke into her hotel room in Chicago. Nothing taken. They were looking for her. William's jaw tightened. The stakes had just gotten much higher. The next morning, William arrived early for the emergency board meeting, accompanied by James Wilson and 2 federal agents who waited discreetly in an adjacent room. As board members filed in, William noticed their surprised expressions at seeing him already seated at the head of the table. Thomas Wells, a silver-haired man with cold eyes, looked particularly displeased. William, Douglas greeted him stiffly. We didn't expect you so early. I wouldn't miss this for the world, William replied pleasantly. Once everyone was seated, Douglas cleared his throat. This emergency session is called to address concerns about Mr. Carter's management approach since acquiring majority ownership. Specifically, his unconventional methods and potentially damaging investigations. Thomas Wells leaned forward. Let's cut to the chase. You've overstepped, Carter. The board is invoking Article 7 of our charter to limit your authority pending a full review. William smiled calmly. Interesting timing, considering what I've discovered about Bellcrest's financials. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. We're not here to discuss routine financial matters, Wells said dismissively. Routine? William raised an eyebrow. I wouldn't call a multi-million-dollar money laundering operation routine. The room went silent. William opened his laptop. Shall I show you what I found? Account numbers, transactions, communications, quite thorough documentation. He looked directly at Wells. Many with your signature, Thomas. Wells's face reddened. These are baseless accusations. Federal agents might disagree, William interrupted. They're reviewing the evidence as we speak. In fact, he checked his watch. They should be serving search warrants at Bellcrest corporate headquarters right about now. As if on cue, William's phone buzzed with a news alert. Breaking, federal agents raid Bellcrest Hotel's corporate offices. He turned the phone around so everyone could see the headline. This meeting is adjourned, William said firmly, and I suggest none of you leave town. Later that day, as federal agents conducted interviews throughout the hotel, William stood in the lobby watching the news coverage on the large display screen. The Bellcrest scandal was the top story, with Maya's in-depth exposé featured prominently, alongside footage of executives being escorted from corporate headquarters. Jasmine approached, concern evident in her expression. Are you all right, Mr. Carter? This is a lot. William nodded. It had to be done. The staff is worried, she admitted. With all this negative publicity, they're afraid for their jobs. William turned to her. Call a staff meeting. Right. Now. 10 minutes later, employees gathered in the ballroom, their faces anxious. I know you're concerned, William began. The news is troubling, and the future may seem uncertain. He paused, looking across the sea of faces. But I want to be clear. What's happening is not about destroying Bellcrest, it's about saving it. He moved through the crowd as he spoke. The corruption we've uncovered wasn't your fault. You were victims of it as much as our guests were. But now we have an opportunity to rebuild something better, something honest. William stopped beside Francisco, who stood supported by his cane but straighter than he had been a month ago. I made a promise when I first revealed myself to you. That this hotel would become a place where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. That promise stands regardless of what happens at the corporate level. Relief visibly washed over many faces. In fact, William continued, I see this as an opportunity. The Bellcrest name may be tarnished in the news today, but our actions, Your actions will determine what it means tomorrow. As the meeting concluded, William noticed a small group of protesters gathering outside the hotel entrance. Their signs declared, "Shame on Bellcrest" and "Boycott corruption." Maya approached him, looking at the protesters. A PR disaster in the making. William considered for a moment, then walked toward the main doors. "Sir?" Selina called after him. "What are you doing?" "Facing it directly," William replied. Outside, the protesters fell silent as William emerged. For a moment, no one moved. Then Jasmine stepped out behind him, followed by Francisco and several other staff members. "My name is William Carter," he addressed the protesters. "I'm the owner of this hotel. The corruption you're protesting against? I'm the one who exposed it." A protester lowered her sign. "Why should we believe you?" Before William could answer, Jasmine stepped forward. "Because he worked as a janitor in his own hotel to uncover the truth," she said clearly. "He could have ignored the problems, but instead, he faced them head-on. Even when it meant taking on powerful people." Another staff member added, "He gave me health care that covered my child's surgery after years of being denied." Francisco tapped his cane for attention. "I worked here 30 years being passed over for promotion because of my age and background. Mr. Carter saw my value when no one else would." One by one, employees shared their stories of how things had changed under William's leadership. The protesters listened, signs gradually lowering. Maya, recording everything on her phone, smiled as she captured the moment when a protester stepped forward to shake William's hand. "It seems," she said quietly to Selina, "that your boss has a gift for turning enemies into allies." Selina watched William speaking earnestly with the former protesters. "It's not a gift," she replied. "It's integrity. Something in short supply these days." By the end of the day, what had begun as a protest had transformed into an impromptu forum on corporate responsibility, with William and his staff answering questions openly and honestly. As dusk fell, William stood at the entrance of his hotel, watching as the last of the crowd dispersed. The battle wasn't over. There would be legal proceedings, restructuring, rebuilding of trust. But for the first time, he felt certain that the foundation was solid. "Sir," Jasmine said, joining him at the entrance, "the Department of Justice just issued a statement naming you as a key informant in their investigation. They're crediting you with exposing one of the largest corporate fraud cases in recent history." William nodded, unsurprised. And so it begins. 6 months later, William Carter stood at the podium in the Bellcrest Grand's renovated ballroom. Before him sat hundreds of employees from across the hotel chain, alongside industry leaders, journalists, and public officials. "Today marks not just the relaunch of the Bellcrest brand," William began, "but a rededication to the principles that should guide all hospitality, dignity, respect, and genuine care." The journey had been arduous. After the federal investigation, 3 board members faced criminal charges, while others resigned in disgrace. The Bellcrest Group had undergone a complete restructuring, with William installing new leadership committed to ethical practices. "Some said this company couldn't recover," William continued. "That the brand was too tarnished, the corruption too deep." He smiled. "They underestimated the power of good people doing the right thing." William gestured to the side of the stage where Selina waited. "It's with great pride that I announce Selina Johnson as the new CEO of the Bellcrest Group." Applause filled the room as Selina joined him at the podium. "Selina has been my right hand for 15 years, William said. "She knows this business inside and out, and more importantly, she understands that success and integrity are not mutually exclusive." Selina stepped to the microphone. "Thank you, William. It's an honor to continue the work you've begun." She turned to the audience. "Under my leadership, Bellcrest will set a new standard for the industry, not just in luxury, but in how we treat every person who walks through our doors, whether guest or employee." After the ceremony, William walked through the hotel one last time wearing his janitor's uniform. Staff and guests alike greeted him warmly, many stopping to shake his hand or share a brief word. In the maintenance area, he found Francisco training. "A new team member, Mr. Carter," Francisco said with a grin. "Back to your old job?" William laughed. Just for today, a reminder of where it all started. Francisco's department had become a model for the entire chain, efficient, respected, and notably diverse. His promotion had opened doors for others who had previously been overlooked. "I hear you're retiring," Francisco said. "Hard to imagine. Bellcrest without you." "It's in good hands," William replied, "and I won't be far. Just shifting my focus." On the main floor, William paused to admire a new addition to the lobby, a wall dedicated to the hotel's history and values. At its center hung the staff photo taken months earlier, with William in his janitor's uniform surrounded by employees. Beneath it, a simple plaque read, "Leadership is service." Jasmine approached, now confidently wearing the title of General Manager. Under her leadership, guest satisfaction scores had reached record highs. "Your granddaughter is waiting in the cafe," she informed him. "She's very impressive. Law school seems to suit her." William smiled, following in her grandmother's footsteps. "My wife would have been proud." Jasmine hesitated. "We received a letter from Richard Langston. He's completed a rehabilitation program and is asking for a reference." "For what position?" "Hotel management, surprisingly." William considered this. "Tell him I'll meet with him. Not to give him his old job back, but perhaps there's a place for someone who's learned from their mistakes." "That's very generous," Jasmine observed. "It's practical," William corrected her. "Someone once gave me a second chance when I needed it." The cycle continues. In the cafe, William found his granddaughter Zoe reviewing case law on her laptop. At 24, she had her grandmother's sharp mind and his determination. "Grandpa," she said, rising to embrace him. "Or should I call you the man who swept his own floors?" She gestured to a magazine on the table featuring Maya's documentary about the Bellcrest transformation, now nominated for several awards. William chuckled. Just Grandpa is fine. They sat together, discussing Zoe's studies and William's plans for a foundation focused on workplace equity and ethical business practices. "You could just enjoy retirement, you know," Zoe teased. "Play golf or something." William shook his head. "Not my style. Besides, there's still work to be done." As they talked, William noticed Richard Langston enter the cafe, then freeze upon E. Seeing him, their eyes met briefly before Richard turned and hurried out. "Someone you know?" Zoe asked, noticing the exchange. "Someone I will know," William replied thoughtfully. "Tomorrow, perhaps." Later that evening, William stood on the balcony of his beach house, watching the sunset over the ocean. His phone buzzed with a message from Selena, a live stream link to Bellcrest's employee appreciation event. On screen, Jasmine addressed a packed room, her confidence evident as she unveiled new staff development programs. The camera panned across faces both familiar and new, all united by a sense of purpose that had been missing before. William smiled, satisfied. The hotel he'd been thrown out of had become something better than he'd initially imagined, not just a business success, but a catalyst for change across an industry. He thought back to that moment in the lobby, when Richard had shouted for him to get out. In a strange way, he owed Richard thanks. That humiliation had revealed a truth that might otherwise have remained hidden. As darkness fell, William gazed at the stars appearing over the water. He couldn't change the past, the decades of discrimination he'd faced, the doors closed to him because of his race, the battles he'd fought to build his business. But he had changed the future, not just for himself, but for countless others who would never know his name. His phone buzzed again, a text from Francisco with a photo of the lobby plaque, "Leadership is service." William texted back, "Remember what I told you the day we met?" Francisco's reply came quickly. "Sometimes the right people are watching even when it seems they're not." William smiled. How true that had been, though not in the way either of them had imagined. He looked out at the horizon once more, where the last light of day met the first stars of evening. A perfect transition, like the one he'd orchestrated at Bellcrest from darkness into light. "They told me to leave my own hotel," William murmured to the sea breeze. "But sometimes it's only by walking through the dirt that you find what's truly clean." What would you do if someone misjudged your worth based on appearance alone? Would you reveal your power immediately, or patiently dismantle their prejudice from within? If this story of dignity and justice resonated with you, Hit that like button, subscribe for more powerful narratives, and share your thoughts in the comments below.